as well. Had a stabbing at Central and Robin on November 28th. Made an arrest in that one. That one was a result of a dispute between two people. A third person joined, and that third person stabbed one of the two that were originally involved in that. So again, this was some sort of dispute that escalated into violence. We ended up identifying the person who was the perpetrator in that, and we made an arrest in that one. And this is just an update on some of the narcotics-related incidents that we've been having. One of the questions that I get often is, what is the police doing about some of the overdoses that we've been seeing in our community? Some of the complaints about drug dealing and other illicit activities in some of our neighborhoods, particularly in that Central Avenue corridor. And we've had a number of operations in that area, made a number of arrests, confiscated a great deal of illicit narcotics, and we're sending the message that that sort of activity is not condoned. It won't be allowed in our city, and if it happens, we'll be very aggressive in terms of addressing those sorts of things. So, great deal of narcotics investigation arrests in the city. And this just gives an idea of the amount of firearms, illegally possessed firearms, that are being taken off the streets on a frequent basis in our city. And since October 24th, we've had a number of firearms taken off the streets. 10 handguns, an assault rifle, a shotgun. And in 10 of those incidents, we've actually made arrests. So this proliferation of handguns, illegally possessed weapons, continues in our community. We're very aggressive and very proactive in addressing this. We're taking a lot of guns off the streets. Any of those guns could have been further used to create and cause trauma and harm to others in our community. And this gives an idea of where we are in terms of total Part 1 crimes in the city. Before, we kind of broke it up by violent crimes and property crimes, but this gives a total picture of where we are in the city, because we get complaints about more than just shootings. We get complaints about more than just an aggravated assault. We get complaints about home invasions, burglaries, larcenies, motor vehicle thefts. And as can be seen here, in all major categories, we made significant progress in addressing those issues. Decreases in all major categories in Part 1 crimes in our city year to date. And one thing that I want to bring particular attention to is the motor vehicle thefts. And you may or may not recall, but last year and even the year before that, our motor vehicle thefts had spiked tremendously. And what was particularly concerning about that is that a lot of those stolen vehicles were being used in other violent crimes in the city. So we knew that if we could address this whole issue with these vehicles being stolen and used in some of these violent crimes, we could actually have some impact in driving down violent crime in our community. And so last year and going into this year, we really were very proactive with our public relations messaging to our community to not have their vehicles left running and unoccupied. We were seeing a great deal of those vehicles that were left running and unoccupied. Someone would jump in those vehicles, steal those vehicles, and use those vehicles in some other crime in our city. And we started out with an educational component to it. When we see these vehicles left running and unoccupied, then we'll approach the owner of the vehicle and let them know what the law was related to that, and what the dangers and what the potential consequences were for those vehicles being left running. And then after a period of time, then there was the enforcement piece of it, where we actually started issuing citations for that. And we've seen tremendous progress, as you've seen, over 30% decrease in the amount of those motor vehicle thefts in our city. And we're confident that that has had some impact and some of the violence that we've seen in our city, and why a lot of the other numbers in our city are actually decreasing. And here's just a synopsis of some of those things. You know, our shooting incidents are down from this time last year. Shooting victims, 30 fewer victims of shootings in our city from last year. 30 fewer people who have been traumatized, 30 fewer families, 30 fewer neighborhoods that have been traumatized this time compared to last year. Burglaries are down, and our motor vehicle thefts, as I talked about, are down as well. This just shows our calls for service continue to rise compared to last year. So there's still a demand for police services. And again, in some of the other categories, you can see we've experienced some decreases from this time last year. And this just graphically shows where we are with our shooting incidents. And during our summer months, we experienced a lot fewer shooting incidents compared to last year. And overall, an over 30% decrease in shooting incidents from this time last year. Shooting victims as well. And as we see during our summer months, we just had a significant drop in the amount of people who were shot in our city compared to last year. We were very proactive, and during our summer months when our crime and our activity typically has some spike, and it's not just here, but we see that in other cities as well. But overall, still a 1/3 decrease in the amount of people who have been shot in the city this year compared to last year. Here are burglaries as well. And again, these are the type of crimes that make people feel less safe. If someone breaks into your home, it's this violation that leads to this feeling of, or this perception of not being safe, and not being as safe as a person may have felt a year ago. And by these numbers dropping 17%, this significant in terms of addressing some of these perception of crime and fear of crime that we're seeing in our city, and how people feel about their safety in the city. And again, here are the motor vehicle thefts and the significant decrease we've seen in those. And lastly, this just illustrates some of the hot spots that we've identified in the city. We continue to monitor these areas. We're not seeing the significant spikes that we were seeing when we first designated these as hot spots, but we still are monitoring closely. They still, in relation to some of the other areas in our city, are still having some elevated levels of activity, and so we're going to leave it like it is right now in terms of these identifiable hotspots. But the important message with this is that even though we're identifying these as hotspots, we have not compromised our efforts nor our police presence in any of the other areas of our city. One of the questions I get quite frequently from residents is, if you've identified 4 or 5 hotspots, what about us? Well, we still are devoting resources. For example, in the Central Avenue corridor, when I talked about in one of the previous slides, we're still running operations in areas where if we see something happening or we know that there's an issue, we still have the flexibility and the versatility to divert resources to those areas to address those. We still have the flexibility and the versatility. I was asked before the press conference about things at the high school. We still have the flexibility to devote resources to problem areas as they arise. So this just, again, illustrates that we're watching these areas. These may change, but for right now, they remain as they are. So with that, I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Chief. And I want to stress the fact that Albany is a bit of an anomaly. What we as mayors are hearing is that across the country, closure rates are at all-time lows, and that there are departments, big cities, small cities, that are struggling to close cases, not just shootings and homicides, but burglaries and other cases. And in the city of Albany, I think what we've demonstrated is that we close cases, we solve homicides, we arrest people, and we turn them over to be prosecuted and held accountable. But the same is true with respect to burglaries, with respect to making arrests from people who are porch pirates, stealing packages off of people's front porches. This department is laser focused and recognizes that when you're able to make arrests, you are able to prevent that next crime from happening. And so I think our focus on treating every case as though it is vitally important to the public safety of our residents that whoever perpetrated it is found, arrested, and held accountable is also part of the reason that we're seeing the declines. And we need the public's help. And so I want to reiterate what the chief said with respect to leaving vehicles running. As the weather gets colder and you think you're just going to be dashing into the gas station to pay for your gas and grab a cup of coffee, leaving your keys in the car is not only putting yourself at risk of losing your car, but it puts your neighbors at risk. If that car is stolen by somebody who then uses it to commit a crime, I think, it gives us pause to say we all have a role to play in ensuring that our community is safe. So whether you're a door dasher or, out there, doing grocery delivery, it's really, really important. Do not leave your car with the keys in it running unattended. And I think we've had success, but it never hurts to remind people, don't let your guard down. Part of the success, yes, we've arrested people who've been involved in stealing cars, but part of the success is you listening, heeding the word of the police department. We want to provide friendly reminders, but we do have a stick, which is it's against the law to leave your car running unattended, and so you could be ticketed. So we want you to keep yourself safe, your property safe, and the rest of the community safe. And the second thing that I want to stress is please, please, please call the police. Going on next door and complaining about the fact that somebody came onto your porch and stole a package is not reporting a crime. That's not how it works. You need to call the non-emergency number of the Albany Police Department and let us know. We have been able to identify hotspot areas. We've been able to deploy resources to those areas, and we've been able to catch people and arrest them for engaging in that activity. This is the holiday season. People are going to have packages delivered. There are many safe ways to deliver packages. There are places where you can pick them up. You have lots of alternatives, but if you do have a package delivered to your doorstep and it is stolen, please call us. Please let us know because, again, we are focused on making this the safest city in America. And so if we don't know about it, we can't do anything about it. This is a department that is focused on ensuring that people who engage in illegal activity, people who steal from our residents, people who try to harm our residents, people who commit vandalism on our residents' property, that they are held accountable because we all care about this community. And so those are two overriding messages as we look at what is, any crime is a crime too many, but we're moving the needle in the right direction. And as we go into this last month of the year and into the holiday season, we want to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe. So don't leave your car running unattended, and please call us if you have any issues where property of yours has been stolen. It's important for us to know. So that's it, and we're happy to answer any questions.
I have one for the chief. Are there any plans for increased security with Hanukkah coming up tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, over the last month or so, maybe even extending past the month, we've had some increased presence at all of our faith-based institutions in the city, particularly our Jewish facilities, and so that'll continue as we move into this next phase here.
And are you finding with as you're confiscating more and more guns, are you finding that these guns have been tied to previous crimes, or what happens to them after you get them? You give them to somebody for testing or referencing or what? Yeah,
so we test all of the weapons that we confiscate, and they go through this national database where we look at the weapons, and we also look, like the mayor said, if there's a shooting, for example, and we get shell casings, we collect those shell casings whether a person gets shot or not. So there are many times when there's been no person that was shot, nothing was hit, but we have shell casings. we'll collect those shell casings and we'll put them in through this database that allow us to know if that weapon was used in any crime anywhere in the state, and anywhere in this country for that matter. And one of the things that we found is that there are some connections between some of these weapons that are used. There may be a shooting in a neighboring city, and they collect their shell casings, and they match a shooting that we had in our city 6 months ago. They have a suspect in custody that now allows us to start to focus on a person, and there's been a lot of cases where we've closed cases simply through that connection. And so, yes, we analyze and put these weapons in databases, and we check to see where they came from. And one of the things that we found is that the vast majority of the weapons, the illegally possessed weapons that we have in our city, come from outside of the state of New York. A lot of them are coming from some of our southern states with some lax gun laws. And we work very, very closely with our federal partners to figure out the appropriate strategies for addressing this influx of weapons in our vehicles. In fact, I just left a conference where our ATF and our DEA representatives that run those institutions in this area were all present, and we had a very healthy conversation about this influx of weapons that are coming from outstate into New York, and strategies for addressing that.
Chief, going back to school security, it's been a busy week, unfortunately. We've had issues at the high school, Green Tech, and some threats to some other schools. I saw that there were no spectators at the boys' basketball games last night. Just wondering, does Albany High have metal detectors? What the status is there, aside from increased police presence? What's sort of being done going forward to make sure that the school day isn't disrupted for students and staff?
So I don't know exactly whether or not they have metal detectors for those special events after school. So again, I think those questions are probably best posed to the school district with those. But what I can tell you is that we work very, very closely with our school system. A lot of the school security officers are former Albany police officers, so we have a very close relationship. Any time something happens, within minutes, we're connecting with them. We're figuring out what's the appropriate response, coordinated response for that. For example, when we got the threats last night, our officers within minutes, we're connecting with school security staff, their administrators, developing a plan overnight. And this plan was very fluid. As information was coming in over the overnight hours, we were changing and adapting and flexing and adjusting. And so we have a very close and a very beneficial and productive relationship with our partners in our school system. And the message to our community is we're proactively doing things behind the scenes to keep our students safe. We're supporting each other, sharing information, sharing resources, sharing equipment. And if things happen, or if there are threats of things happening, we are together. We're in a room. We're conference calling. We're figuring out what the issues are, what's the appropriate response, a response that the school system and the police department are comfortable with, and we implement those things together and to keep our students safe.
Can I just add, sorry. In addition to the law enforcement response, one of the things that we are focused on are the resources that we have to serve youth in the City of Albany through funding that we receive from both the federal government and the state government. And so I meet regularly with the Commissioner of Recreation, Youth, and Workforce Services. We just had a meeting earlier this week, and we identified that we are seeing a slight uptick in the number of incidents that involve juveniles. We have been a bit of an anomaly with respect to violent crime and even the car thefts that we're seeing in our city, where they haven't been driven mainly by juveniles. As a matter of fact, fewer than 10% of our violent crimes are committed by juveniles. But we're seeing a slight increase in these incidents that kind of all came together. And so I have directed our commissioner to work with the police department to identify individuals who may not be remanded because, again, with raise the age and the way that the family court system works, but so that we can reach out to those young people the adults in their lives and connect them with services that are available. So right now, I think we have funding for roughly an additional 20 to 30 young people between the ages of some of the programs differ. These tend to be 18 to 24, but we can also work with 16 and 17-year-olds with some of these programs. And so we're going to be looking to see what we can do to really direct, not wait for someone to come to us, but for us to be able to go to these young people who are justice involved, but who are still at home, still maybe going to school, and trying to really urge them to take advantage of these programs. So again, it's a two-pronged approach, right? We want to hold people accountable when they commit crimes, particularly violent crimes, and young people with guns can be very, very dangerous. So, our hope is that those young people are remanded to programs that can help them, but that they're not just out on the street. But for those who may be just starting to get involved in some of these activities, we're going to reach in and try to pull them into some of the programs and the funding that we have. And that's in great part because of New York State. Governor Hochul has made this a priority. It's not acceptable to her to hear the answer that, there's nothing we can do. And so she's really focused resources that we then are the beneficiaries of.
Mayor, what's the status of the community centers that are going to be constructed?
Sure. So we closed on the property on Livingston that we expect to become the new West Hill Community Center. And we have hired a firm to design the final design that will then go out to bid for us to build. So there'll be more community meetings in the coming weeks and months to make sure that we have a design that the community supports and that meets the needs that were identified when we did the feasibility study in the first place. We have money that has been authorized to be bonded to build that, and we also are using some ARPA money for that project. For the Hoffman, really complete rehab that's going to happen with that center, which is a teen center and critically important resource in the South End. We are right now just going through the environmental impact phase that we are required to go through, and we expect that that will be moving along as well. We have ARPA money committed to that. We also have some bonded funds that are available. And we think that, what we've heard loud and clear from community members in both of those areas of our city is that they want a place that's safe for seniors and for young people to come, to congregate, to be in community together, and that's what we're going to build.
And so I don't know the motive with this case. What I do know is that we received a call from security at Green Tech, and they, through whatever means they had, I believe it was through some video from their school, they had reason to believe that one of their students was in possession of a gun. And by the time our officers got there, Green Tech had already intervened with this and had already taken that person into custody, and that person was being held. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe that they had already removed the gun from that person. So this all happened before our officers got there. I don't know what this person was planning on doing, but the fact of the matter is, anytime we have a young person with a loaded weapon in a school, it's a dangerous situation that could have easily escalated if there was some sort of altercation involving that student in the school. But their security staff, from what I'm being told, did a great job of identifying that this person was potentially armed and making sure that they put some things in place to prevent or mitigate the chances of any further harm happening in the schools. Yeah, so right now, those officers are, they've been suspended without pay, obviously. There's been recommendations for termination. Those officers are exercising their collective bargaining rights, and there's a very good chance they may challenge that termination. And there's an outside agency that is investigating that case as well to determine whether or not there's any criminal potential for that case. But for right now, we've concluded our internal investigation with that, and our internal investigation has resulted in a recommendation of termination for those three.
Can you walk us through what the basis for that recommendation was?
I'd rather not get into that piece of it right now, but the fact of the matter is they demonstrated some conduct that, in my opinion, justified a recommendation of termination. And more come out as they exercise their rights to contest that recommendation of termination. But publicly, I don't want to go any further than that right now.
Can I just let you know something? Yeah, I just wanted to let you know because I learned today that they have filed with PERB, and they are seeking to have the Public Employee Relations Board mediate this case. As you know, we changed the law in Albany. We created a public safety commissioner who we expect that the public safety commissioner will hear any grievance that they have with respect to this. And so, our corporation counsel would counsel the chief, if he was here, not to go into the details of that case because we are filing a letter with PERB telling them that we don't believe they have jurisdiction, that because we have a public safety commissioner. This has been settled by the Court of Appeals in a lawsuit that was brought involving Schenectady. So just given that we're in the throes of that legal process, we just have to be cautious about the specific details that we go into. Sorry.
Certainly understand that, but the idea that a public employee is terminated, the cause for that, I would imagine, would be public information. I don't think there's any reason to withhold that.
Yes, and so my recommendation would be to file any sort of requests, for public information for that, through a FOIL request, so that request can be reviewed by our legal team. Like I said, it's just not. I'm not comfortable talking publicly about the details of that, but certainly, if there was some request and it's reviewed by our corporation counsel, then whatever is permissible to be released will be released for public consumption.
Chief, is there any update from your end on the police chief search in Ann Arbor?
No. I have not spoken with any officials in Ann Arbor since I was interviewed by them. So no contact with them.
Any update on refurbishing police center on Henry Johnson?
Yeah, we're close. Sometime after the new year, we'll have our dispatchers moved in there. We've made some moves with some administrative staff, and it's going to be a building that the city can be proud of when it's done. Okay, thank you.